Your spiritual protection is not keeping you safe. It is the very thing that is marking you as prey. Think about nature. Who wears the armor? Who carries the heavy shell? It is the bottom feeder. It is the creature that knows it is small enough to be eaten. Every time you visualize that white light bubble, every time you zip lock your aura before walking into a crowded room, you are broadcasting a specific signal to the universe. You are screaming, I am fragile, I am here, and I am afraid. You think your walls are keeping the danger out, but in the laws of energetics, a wall does not deflect a strike. It defines the target. By building a fortress around your soul, you are solidifying your identity as a victim. You are giving the chaos of the world a surface to collide with. I spent 20 years reinforcing my walls. I thought if I just prayed hard enough, or smudged enough, or rebuked enough, I would finally be safe. But the thicker the seal, the heavier I became. And the heavier I was, the easier I was to hit. Today, we are tearing the walls down. We are going to talk about why your defense mechanisms are actually a beacon for the very things you fear. And we're going to learn the art of radical invincibility. Not the safety of the tank, but the invincibility of the ghost. Welcome back. If you've been following this mini-series, you know we've been slowly deconstructing the entire concept of spiritual warfare. In video 1, we dismantled the idea of attack, realizing that what we often perceive as demons or bad vibes is actually unhealed trauma echoing in the body. In video 2, we looked at somatic safety, how to heal the nervous system so you don't feel constantly threatened by the world. Today, we arrive at the final piece of the puzzle, the solution. Most of us operate under the physics of warfare. We believe that because there is negative energy out there, hate, anger, chaotic vibes, we must build a barrier to keep it out. We believe that safety is found in separation. But here is the trap. Walls don't just keep things out. They provide a surface for impact. When you resist an energy, you make it real. You give it density. You are effectively saying, this threat is significant enough that I must alter my entire existence to block it. You become a prisoner in your own fortress, and eventually the siege mentality wears you down. So if God can be a trap and the universe can be a trap and protection itself is a trap, where do we go? If we don't shield, won't we be destroyed? I want to propose a different state of being, a state where you are not a fortress to be defended, but a space to be moved through. This is what I call transmissibility. It is the realization that true safety comes not from being hard, but from being transparent. Let's look at the mechanics of this. I call it the physics of hate. When someone directs anger, judgment, or those heavy bad vibes toward you, they are essentially throwing a projectile. In the spiritual world, we often call this a psychic attack. But let's ground it. It's an energetic projectile. It carries emotional weight and momentum. Now, if you are living in the warrior identity, which we discussed is often just a trauma response disguised as holiness, your ego is solid. You have a heavy identity to defend. You are the good person, the empath, the light worker. You are the one who is right. When you are solid, when you are bracing for impact, that projectile hits you. It collides with your shield, and according to the laws of physics, that collision creates friction, it creates heat, it creates damage. By shielding, you are essentially saying, I am here, I am a target, and I am afraid of you. This is why so many of us in spiritual communities feel exhausted. We are walking around engaging in a silent war of resistance. We feel the bad energy of a room. Maybe it's a chaotic grocery store or a tense family dinner, and we tense up. We clamp down. We try to push it away, but resistance is an act of solidification. The more you resist the energy, the more you trap it within your own field. You become a container for the very thing you are trying to avoid. I spent years doing this. I would walk into a crowded place, feel overwhelmed, and immediately start zipping up my energetic field. I would chant mantras to block the energy. And I always left with a headache, completely drained. Why? Because I was spending my life force holding up a wall. I was fighting a war that only existed because I showed up to the battlefield wearing armor. Radical invincibility is the practice of transmissibility. It is the decision to become like smoke. If you are smoke, you cannot be cut. You cannot be bruised. If someone throws a stone at a cloud, the cloud doesn't need a shield. The stone passes through and the cloud remains unharmed. The stone falls to the ground, not because the cloud fought it, but because the cloud offered it nothing to hit. The cloud wins by refusing to play the game of solidity. It sounds poetic, doesn't it? Being like smoke. But how do we actually do this when our biology is screaming at us to fight? When the adrenaline hits, how do you dissolve? It requires us to go against our deepest survival instincts. It requires somatic softening. When you feel a threat, maybe it's a judgmental comment from a relative or a heavy atmosphere in a bar, your automatic response is to contract. Your belly tightens, your jaw locks, you stop breathing, you become solid, you are preparing for the impact. The practice of transmissibility is to notice that contraction, and instead of tightening, you open. It feels counterintuitive. It feels dangerous. It feels like walking naked into a storm. But try it. Next time you feel that wave of negativity coming at you, visualize your physical body becoming porous. Imagine the space between your atoms expanding. Drop your shoulders, soften your belly. This is crucial. The belly is the center of our energetic defense. It's where we store our fear. When you soften the belly, when you let it hang outward, you signal to your nervous system that you are not in a war. You tell your primitive brain that there is no predator. You say to yourself, I am open space. Let it pass through. You don't ignore the energy. This isn't spiritual bypassing or dissociation. You feel it entering, you feel it moving, and this is the key. You feel it leaving. You don't hook onto it with a story. You don't say, why is this person attacking me? You simply let the sensation move through your somatic system like wind through a screen door. If you don't close the door, the wind cannot break it. I remember the first time I really tried this. I was in a situation with a family member that usually triggered intense anxiety and defensiveness. I felt the tightening start, the old armor trying to form. But I stopped, I exhaled, I imagined I was a ghost, and the anger that was directed at me, it just dissolved. It had nowhere to land. It was the most powerful I had ever felt, and I wasn't doing anything. This is the paradox. Vulnerability is the ultimate armor. By refusing to defend yourself, you become indefensible. You become untouchable. This practice changes how you interact with the world entirely. You stop being a thermometer and you become a thermostat. A thermometer reacts. If the room is hot, the thermometer goes up. If the room is cold, it goes down. This is how most empaths live. We walk into a room, we feel the vibe and we match it. If the vibe is heavy, we get heavy. Then we run home to cleanse ourselves, blaming the energy vampires for our exhaustion. We are victims of the atmosphere because we are constantly reacting to it, but a thermostat does not react. A thermostat sets the reality. If a thermostat is set to 70 degrees and the room drops to 60, the thermostat doesn't panic, it doesn't freeze. It simply activates its own nature until the room matches it. When you practice radical invincibility, you stop protecting your energy and you start projecting your regulation. When you walk into a chaotic room, instead of shielding yourself, which is an act of fear, you anchor into your own nervous system. You regulate your breathing, you soften your body, you embody peace so loudly that the room begins to resonate with you. This is the biological concept of co-regulation. The most regulated nervous system in the room pulls the others toward it. You aren't fighting the darkness. You are simply introducing so much light, so much presence, so much grounded safety that the darkness cannot sustain itself. This is the end of the us versus them mentality. You realize that the energy vampire isn't a monster to be fought. They are likely just a person with a dysregulated nervous system looking for a hook. If you don't give them a hook, If you don't give them your fear or your judgment, they cannot drain you. In fact, you might just heal them simply by being there. You become a tuning fork that brings the room back into harmony, not by force, but by resonance. I want you to imagine a life where you never have to protect yourself again. Imagine waking up and not putting on the armor of God or the white light bubble. Imagine walking into the world completely open, knowing that you are safe not because you are walled off, but because you are vast. The ocean doesn't need to shield itself from a drop of poison. It is too big, too moving, too alive to be corrupted. When you stop identifying as the fortress, you can finally identify as the ocean. It takes courage to drop the shield. It feels like walking naked into a storm, but I promise you the storm is only dangerous to the things that resist it. I've shared a bit of my story, and now I'd love to hear yours. What spiritual traps have you run into? Have you exhausted yourself trying to shield against the world? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might just be the key that helps someone else find the courage to put down their armor. You are definitely not alone.